Good afternoon and welcome to United TV. This is our Bariatric Friday session. Today is November 1st, 2024, Friday, Bariatric Friday. Dr. Irgau is here with me. Dr. Irgau, how are you doing?
Doing great, Kemal. Of course, this is my favorite part of the week, as you know.
Well, it should be the favorite part, right? So, because we are here together.
Absolutely.
And we are going to discuss another topic today is the multivitamin use. And why it's crucial, especially with the population that we have with the with obesity after bariatric surgery with so much weight loss. This becomes extremely important. So we want you to kind of go through those with us, and then I have some questions. So why is it so important to have multivitamin after the surgery? And then we can discuss pre and post, but I think it's more important at the post level.
Post, yeah, absolutely. So as we've said many times in our sessions, Kemal, with bariatric surgery, we are undertaking changes to the digestive tract. So the processing of food by our body is changed. By and large, that change is beneficial for the patients. That's why we do it, right? In other words, we make changes so the person ends up consuming much less calories than they would otherwise, right? And that is also associated with a sense of fullness and satisfaction of the body itself from a metabolic point of view that doesn't drive those patients to be hungry and constantly chase food, right? So that's why people end up losing weight, as opposed to a diet, for instance, where people still could have much less calorie intake and yet not being able to lose weight, or they lose weight up to a certain point and then it stops right there. With bariatric surgery, it's different. Yes, there is less calorie intake, but the metabolic changes of the surgery itself allow the person actually to continue to lose weight up to their healthy level. But the caveat of that is that when we make changes to the digestive tract to decrease calorie intake, we're also decreasing the body's ability to take in nutrients as a whole, right? And there is a particular class of nutrients which is critically important here, and those are the vitamins, the micronutrients, which include some minerals as well. And that the importance here is that those substances are needed by our body. They are essential. That's why they're called vitamins. If you think about the word vitamin, it comes from vita, and vita means life, right? They are essential to our life. In other words, if we don't have them, eventually we become very, very sick and then potentially die as well, right? So those nutrients are essential to our body, but they are essential in very, very small quantities, right? So we have to be able to get foods that have those substances, and we have to be able to have a body that absorbs and processes those substances, right? So after bariatric surgery, we've decreased our body's ability to process nutrients as such, and that also will have an impact in its ability to take on those nutrients, right? So that's one of the weak links of bariatric surgery, right? That it can potentially decrease your ability to take in vitamins. And that's why it's so absolutely essential in our preparation, education of bariatric patients that we really, really emphasize how critically important it is for them to take on vitamins afterwards, not just for a few months, but for the rest of their life.
So now the one thing that vitamins we talk about as important, but I always mention this so that after you and I we discussed so many times, we actually recommend this for others who are not going through the surgery, who don't have morbid obesity.
Absolutely.
Like you and I, Sean was here earlier.
Yeah.
We need vitamins at different levels based on what we do and how we eat and how much exercise we do. So it's something that we need to do because we have bariatric surgery and we lose so much weight. But it's just like, it's more important because the food intake is a lot less. And therefore, the chances of being malnutrition is a lot higher. But can we just talk about like the overall why vitamins are important for us, not just for the morbid obesity?
Absolutely. So as I said earlier on, vitamins are a class of nutrients that our body needs and cannot do without. It needs them in small quantities. And nature provides those for us in foods that grow or are available, right, in nature. Now, as long as one is getting nutrition directly from its source. In other words, if, for instance, you didn't have to go to the store and we had all the foods that we need in our garden, for instance, right? And then if I wanted a tomato, I would go down in the garden and pick it up. If I wanted an apple, I would do the same. If I wanted an orange, I would do the same from the garden. If we had that, then surely we wouldn't need vitamins to the extent that we are needing them now, because those foods contain most of those naturally needed vitamins in the quantities that are enough for us, right? But the change in our nutritional habits in modern society is been such that very few, if any of us, actually are able to get the food directly from its source. In other words, directly from the soil, from a plant, from a tree, etc. Right? We go to the store, and within the store there are no trees where things grow. Right? There are shelves, right, where people pick up those fruits, vegetables from gardens, from fields and other places, sometimes thousands of miles away from where we are, right? They pick them, they store them, they transport them, then they store them again, and then they place them in those shelves. So those foods have really lost a lot of their original nutrient content, particularly from a vitamin and micronutrient point of view, right? So if you live in a society as modern and as city-oriented as most of us live in, where we get our foods from the shelves of the stores, then the chances are we're not going to get enough of those vitamins and micronutrients just from the food. That's why we will need those bottles, right, that have vitamins written in them. All of us are familiar with them, and there are lots of varieties nowadays, obviously, but all of them have one thing in common. They have essentially packaged all those essential nutrients in one single pill, and if we take one of those daily, then we will have satisfied them, right? Now, you correctly said, Kemal, that we absolutely need them before surgery as well. Well, guess how do we know that? Simply, for instance, when we see our bariatric patients for consultation, one of the first things we do after we start the process is blood work, right? And we look at the blood work. I can tell you, lots of the patients that we see actually will have vitamin deficiencies, particularly the vitamins like vitamin D, routinely. And then we start supplementing those even before the surgery. And now, when we're doing surgery that actually interferes with the body's ability to process our vitamins, it becomes even more imperative for people to absolutely be compliant with intake of vitamins. And for bariatric patients, essentially, this means taking a multivitamin, and there are various brands. Some are specifically packaged for bariatric patients.
We'll get to that
sure.
in a minute, Dr. Erkan. So I want to kind of go back to this fresh food idea. So I mentioned this in other sessions maybe a couple of times, and then you already at the house. I do have a little garden. The idea of that was initially just for fun. I didn't think that I would get the entire summer produce from that yard. But one of the things that was really important is, and it comes to my mind in the mindful eating discussion as well. So understanding where this is coming from. The freshness is one thing, right? But also how it's being processed, how it's being planted, how long it takes for a tomato to become a tomato. Unless you actually see it, because today and nowadays we kind of lost that, especially kids. They think that the chicken is something that's produced in the factory, and they're just kind of it is, but I mean, that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So when they see something in movies and others where some other cultures, when they do sacrifice animals, they're like, oh my God, this is so inhumane. Hey, you do it in factories all day long, right? So to get to the reality of the meaning and mindfulness, meaningfulness is that you kind of really need to see it, even if it doesn't get to you the entire summer need for the tomatoes or the peppers or this or that. But this year I'm doing something different because the winter time now is coming in. I actually have 5 big pots in the garage. My garage does have windows, should get some sun directly, and it's heated. So I want to kind of continue what I did in summer, maybe lower level, low level. So because that actually helps me to appreciate what we eat overall. But then knowing that real tomato tastes different than what we get from the market also makes it very clear to me that we are not getting our vitamins from those products. It has to be the real one, fresh one, and all those things are just adding up together. So it goes to the mindful eating, where now when you raise your own tomato and someone comes in and then just grabs two of them and eat all of them at one shot, you hate that person. You're like, just get the hell out of my house, because you know how long it takes to grow that. So all these things, I think it's important for people to really have a good appreciation. And it also makes them understand other things better. So that when we say freshness, many people say, hey, this is fresh. I just got it from the supermarket. Well, yeah, as you said, it's coming from 3,000 miles away. It's not so fresh anymore. So now.
But that's a great point, though, Kemal. I mean, by being disconnected from the source of our food, we haven't just lost the vitamins. We've lost also our understanding what it means to be nourished, right? We talked about something very important, and that's appreciation. You said how you start appreciating what it takes for nature to produce things when you see the tomato growing from a seed to something so beautiful, right? Well, if you grow up as a child who hasn't seen that, and all you know about food is in the shelf, it's very difficult to appreciate. It's very difficult to sit before you start a meal and having some kind of thought of gratitude or appreciation, right? Other cultures you mentioned correctly, where there is much closer connection to the source, for instance, where meat is actually comes after you sacrifice the animal in your house. And as you said, if you grow up in this society, you're horrified by that idea. But actually that connection gives you an appreciation of what it takes for nature for you to be nourished, right? So you are going to be much more grateful for that, as opposed to just knowing that food comes from the shelf. So that disconnect is not just about vitamins, as you say. We've lost a touch of other very important things as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, let's go back to what you were about to start with, choosing the right vitamin. What are the things that we need to be watching? And for our patient after surgery, do they need some more specific vitamins? How do we make that process?
So for the vast majority of the bariatric patients, essentially there are certain vitamins that are absolutely critical for them to take, right? We talk about a multivitamin to begin with. And multivitamin is essentially a packaged tablet that will have, it could be a tablet, it could be a gum, it could be a different other packaging, but it will have most of the micronutrients that are absolutely necessary, right? But on top of that, we want our patients to also take, importantly, two other substances, and that is calcium and vitamin D. And some patients will have to take probably vitamin B12 as well, and in some cases, added iron as well. Okay, so let's leave the B12 and the iron aside. Let's just talk about the first three important substances. One is the multivitamin, as I said. The other one is calcium. Calcium is critically important for our bariatric patients because they may not be able to get enough of it from nutrition. And this is something called calcium citrate, and there are different packages as well. Very often, it's not something that you can take just once a day because it doesn't get absorbed well. So most patients will require actually 2 tablets, generally of 500 or 600 milligram calcium citrate. The other thing that they will need on a daily basis is vitamin D. And typically, people will need 300,000 units of vitamin D to be taken as well. Now, then going to some specific groups, for instance, women who are still menstruating and they're losing some blood on a monthly basis, they could be deficient of iron as well, particularly after bariatric surgery, particularly after procedures like gastric bypass or the duodenal switch. So it's critical for them to be taking iron as well, added to their multivitamin. Now, patients who have gastric bypass, will sometimes require additional B12 as well. And that comes either in 500 microgram or 1000 microgram. And most patients will need that. But one critical addition to this vitamin compliance is follow-up. They have to follow up with their bariatric surgeon. They have to follow up with us so that we have an opportunity to do blood tests on a periodic level, right? If we do blood tests, for instance, at the 6 months after bariatric surgery, maybe yearly after that, we will be able to pick up on things that they may be short of before they become major problems, right? So if the vitamin B12 is a little bit below of normal, we can supplement it. But if it's greatly below normal, they could be starting to have major problems. It could be even nerve damage, after B12. Similarly, with vitamin D, with their calcium level and other things as well, it is important that if there are deficiencies, these are caught early on so that we can take measures to supplement them. So we talk about need for patients to become compliant with taking their vitamins, but also that goes along with the need to follow up long-term as well with doctors who are familiar with these needs so that checks can be undertaken in a timely fashion and things can be addressed if they are missed.
And after we have that, I think bringing this into our daily routine is another challenge. And I do want to share my screen very quickly. It should be very simple. So any of these boxes would do it. I use them. So, if you don't want to put more than 7 days, sometimes people, rightfully, maybe they don't want to put things too long from their original boxes. But 7 days, they won't go bad. So then do that a week and then make it a lot easier and simpler to manage. I do it. And when I go for like a 2 weeks vacation, I take this other box with me. I have the 14 days already filled. So then I don't have to worry about how to do, what to do, when to do. So that's all kind of configured in a way. So this is one way of doing it. But other than these small, inexpensive tools, how do we make this our daily routine?
So essentially, we have to be organized, right? We have to be planners, right? We cannot leave things to chance, right? We cannot be casual about these things any longer, right? Kemal, it's not about, combing our hair or changing shirts. This is our health. So we have to give it adequate attention. And very often I come across, comments from people saying, oh, you know what, I don't like to take any pills or tablets, or I don't like to take any medications. And I get that. I understand, right? Nobody wants to do that. But we don't want to be in a situation where then we are forced to take lots of medication where we have no choice at all because we're sick. So we're trying to prevent that situation. So yes, it is really looks very taxing when you think, okay, I have to take a multivitamin in the morning, then I have to take 2 calcium tablets, then I have to take vitamin D, and sometimes I have to take B12 as well, and iron has to come as well. Well, this is necessary. It's a question of understanding and accepting it and putting it in our routine. And as you just mentioned, there are ways for us to make this palatable. For instance, if we decide that we're going to take the multivitamin in the morning alongside with one of our calciums in the morning, we can decide that. And then in the evening, we can take that other calcium tablet and the vitamin D. So we can split them into 2. But this is upon us to be able to do so that our health doesn't suffer in the future. We're doing things today, so tomorrow or the next day or the next month or the next few years, we don't have to end up in a hospital where our life will be at a standstill. Then we will not be able to do all the other things that we want to do right now, right? So it's about safeguarding our health. And we as professionals here really are very interested in making sure that health is a priority for people. So we have to be able to tell them when things like multivitamins are critically important for them.
So just recently, one of my friends' son actually had a surgery, and his recovery was kind of slow, and they discovered that he was not getting enough vitamins. And he's a young kid. He's, I think, 19 or maybe 18. So a little bit skinny, didn't eat much. And surgery is not bariatric. He was actually underweight probably, but when they actually find out why the recovery was slow, is because of the vitamin deficiency. So this is not, again, just for the bariatric surgery and post-bariatric surgery, but this is how our body actually is preparing itself to deal with challenges. The challenge could be, well, you get injured, then it needs its full force to fight that. So you may be hurting, like, I don't know if many people would actually relate to this. If you have a little small pain on one of your, like if you have ingrowing toenail, right? Life stops. It's in a very small part of your body, and it's far away from the brain, but life stops. And then your entire body is trying to fix that situation. If it's not fully charged, then it's not going to be able to fight as much. And if it has all the essential gas in it, so it's going to go full power, and then it will be able to deal with those types of ups and downs. So this is the reality of today. So and it's, again, easily overlooked, because we assume that everyone is taking what they need to be taking. And people also assume that they do take what they need to take. But earlier, when you said the blood work, we have seen patients who have different health problems, not seeing their primary care physician for more than a year, not having any blood work for several years. So part of the program that we have, one of the starting point is the blood work. We need to know if you have iron deficiency, if your TSH is in normal limits, if your A1C is in normal limits. There are other things that we are looking at, but these are the kind of foundation of it. So, but then we actually diagnose those patients at the time of consult, right after the blood work that they do. So that's the reality. That's why this is, again, becoming more and more important. And we want to make sure that the recovery is fast and quick and efficient. So that's not only going to happen with best surgeons or best surgeries or best nurses, but it's going to happen with what patient does at home after the surgery. So that's why we are emphasizing this and hoping that those who are watching find this helpful. And we have done this in different ways, and that's it's in the specific playlist in our YouTube channel. So you can actually get more information. We try to cover them in certain ways, but they're not all identical. So you can actually listen to the others. They're not really long sessions. So this is important. So everyone should be paying attention to what they do day to day, daily, and hopefully we can help them as well. Dr. Ergau, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
you.
We'll
be back next week. Next week is the election. We had a session earlier. This is an important time for everyone to take the responsibility of voting. So that's a huge power that we have. So everyone, regardless of the party that they support, they need to go and vote, and hopefully we have a great turnout so that we can be proud of the system that we have in place. So until next time, please stay safe.